I admit it, a lot of EDM is formulaic. Most successful artists would rather rely on tried and true genre tricks guaranteed to make crowds go crazy than take actual musical risks. But there's one auteur who I can always count on to push himself with every release and say, you know, I think we can still make dubstep even more unpleasant. There aren't many American bass music artists who can say they've produced this style consistently since it first blew up here, and even fewer who have shown serious willingness to evolve their sound in the decades since. But Must Die has done both, and that makes him easily one of the most interesting artists to follow in the dubstep scene. His last album, Crisis Vision, really caught my attention because it had a lot of genre experimentation and cultivated a very distinct style, bringing in video game sounds without devolving into chiptune and retro synths without devolving into... And since then, he's deliberately distanced himself from the term dubstep and even publicly beefed with people who would associate him with it. So hopefully he hasn't already blocked me. Anyway, this week he released a new album, Feral Fantasy, which further solidifies the unique Must Die sound. And I could talk for 5 minutes about how the drums hit hard and the sound design is crazy and the mixing is impeccable, but that's pretty much a given with any artist that's been making this type of music for this long. And that's all anyone in this scene ever talks about anyway, so I won't waste your time. I want to know if this is like good music? Let me put it this way. One of my main goals with this YouTube thing is to make modern bass music more accessible to casual listeners. I can't do that for this album. If you're not several levels deep in dubstep degeneracy already, you're gonna fucking hate it. Like Crisis Vision, Feral Fantasy covers a lot of different subgenres like techno, hard dance, bass house, and on not a single one of them does he waste the opportunity to make the harshest, most hyper-aggressive version of that style possible. And it leans even further into the retro synth and drum sounds. I don't want to call it 80s nostalgia, because that would imply happiness. This is more like if you experienced grave trauma in the 80s. Like if you watched The Thing at a little too young of an age, this might bring that back for you. And I have to respect the clarity of Must Die's vision, but I'm also really curious to know how many people are actually finding this enjoyable to listen to, because frankly, I'm not. There are some legitimately groovy tracks here like Violence and Move I Make, but most of the time the dance beats get covered up by harsh distortion and grating synths. And a few songs like Keep You Safe and You Should Know are really confusing to me, with uplifting melodies and vocal samples that, in theory, should give off euphoric rave vibes, but in execution seem designed to send you on a bad trip. Not really molding these things to fit the evilness of his style as much as forcing them to fit like a round peg in a square hole. I think what I'm missing from this whole thing is a sense of irony, I guess. Like, Lil Texas is another artist who makes similarly over-the-top hardcore EDM, but there's a clear tongue-in-cheek aspect to his brand that comes through in all of his songs, inviting you to participate in the gimmick, because who knows? You might have fun. Whereas this album is played completely straight, like you're supposed to earnestly accept it at face value. And the face value is deliberately unpleasant. And in the case of the last 30 seconds of Gagged and Bound, literally noise. I think this one went a little too far for me, guys. I do enjoy a few tracks, but ultimately what I'm gonna remember about Feral Fantasy isn't any one song, but rather the overall listening experience, which I could best describe as like bobbing for ecstasy in Satan's asshole. Not for me, but I know there will be some who hear that and go, So I'm curious, if you've given this album a listen, what did you like or didn't like? And if you haven't listened, have I sold you? And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I recently learned that that's Tommy Innett's thing, so I guess I'm gonna have to stop saying that. Everything you could ever think of has already been done, folks. So the lesson here is never do anything, except watch my videos. Do that. Anyway, my name's Brian, aka Digit, and I will see you next week. God, it feels good to say that.